am I?
Yeah,
Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the O. Charles Show. It is already March. I can't believe it, but thank you guys for hanging with us. I just wanted to preface this episode with a few words. First of all, it was recorded with my dad in February, and so it wasn't actually, it was supposed to go out in February, and it didn't. Things got kind of crazy, but here we are, so it's coming out now to you in a time where we are going to be listening to the news perhaps more than we would at other times. There's been some things going on in international politics and just kind of around the world. And so this episode is about balancing the news in your life. And right now you might feel like the news needs to be a priority. Maybe you have some very real concerns. I just wanted to say that no matter, what side you're on, what your opinions are, I'm not going to tell you what to think. I am just going to say that it is still important to take a break from the news, and yes, it is very important to know what's going on, know what's happening in our country and across the world, and it's also important to be present with the people and events that you have in your life right now. So I just would like to remind you that no matter how out of control things get in the world, God is in control. Ultimately, He is sovereign, and He knows what He's doing even when we have no clue what His plans look like. So with that encouragement, I'd like to invite you to keep listening. Thank you so much for being here. And as always, I hope you learned something great on this episode of the O. Charles Show. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the O. Charles Show. I'm your host, Charlie Charles, and I am here with Dad today to discuss how to balance the news in your life. In a world where everything is online and we get these quick takes all over the place, Instagram, Facebook, and our news apps as well, it can be hard to know where to start, where to stop, and how to keep it in its proper place. So thanks for joining us, Dad.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, and this may apply more to some of our younger listeners, but why is it important to stay up with the news?
Well, I think it's important because you need to be just aware of what's going on, because everybody you interact with is filtering the information they're getting in through whatever lens that they have, and it may be skewed in one direction or another. It may be the opinion that you have. It may not be the opinion that you have. But every day you're interacting with people that have decidedly formed an opinion, especially about politics, and especially about American politics, even when you're traveling around the world.
Yeah.
And so it's important to be informed about what's going on, why you believe what you believe, and how to discuss that in a way that's not necessarily offensive.
Yeah, so those are two interesting points there that I noticed as you said. It's not just taking in what's happening, but how to form your own opinion on that. And second, how to discuss that respectfully, which is something a lot of times people, if they have a different opinion, they're like, oh my gosh, we have to have this argument about it now. But if you can defend your own opinion, you can present it in a way that is interactable for another person.
I think part of the problem is, for a lot of people, is that their worldview is shaped by whatever they're reading in the new, and oftentimes they're reading this on a website or some news source that is slanted in one way or another. And if your worldview is not based on the Bible, you're not basing your worldview on truth, and it's easy to be skewed one way or the other.
Yeah, so the danger there is, while it's good to stay up with the news, we have to be aware we're not absorbing it mindlessly.
Yeah, and just because you have one political leaning doesn't mean that everybody on that side is doing everything the right way. So, every politician is a human. They're flawed, and they're making decisions based on different reasonings that may or may not fall in line with what you believe, even if you voted for that person.
Right. Yeah, so that's where it's important to form your own opinions, and to do that, obviously, you need to be able to look at what's really going on. So, this will be a good next question. What qualities do you look for in a news source?
Well, I try to find balanced things that are evaluating the facts based on facts. I mean, it seems like a simple thing to say, but every single news source that you read, for the most part, is pushing you in one direction or another. And so it's important to find ones that you know are looking objectively at things and not subjectively at things. And that's a hard thing to do. So sometimes that requires reading things from the left or the right and then filtering it through your biblical worldview lens to see, what is the best thing here? Why is what this person is doing right or wrong? Or maybe it's just a gray area. Maybe it's not right or wrong. Maybe it's just something that you disagree with morally. Although if your morals are based on the Bible, then it is going to be right or wrong. But there's definitely some gray areas, especially with politics, when it comes to how countries handle their own things in relationship to other countries.
Yeah, so whatever source you pick, maybe not just sticking to one news channel. Maybe you're saying, look at a couple different things.
Yeah, and I think it's important to hear things from the other side, too. So just because you have one opinion, and that, when you're dealing with Christian apologetics, a lot of things that you study are other religions, so you know what they are thinking and how that relates to what you are thinking. And a lot of times the people that I interact with in the workplace are reading news that's either very, very left or very, very right. And that's all they're listening to and hearing. And that becomes a little bit toxic. So even I found myself, with podcasts, there's so many news and political podcasts that are out. And when you listen to them, I travel a lot for work, and sometimes when I would exercise, I'd be listening to these podcasts, and they make their money when there's controversy and when there's things to rile you up about. So much of it is just negative, 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 and that's all they're doing, and it's to get you riled up against the other side, which is part of the problem I think we're having in the United States, is that the political sides just hate each other so much. And it hasn't always been that way. There used to be a much more balanced, centrist, middle ground that's kind of been worn away over the past 10 years.
Yeah, if you look back at even the political spectrum when the United States of America was started, classical conservatism and classical liberalism actually had most of the qualities in common. It was just slight differences in how they wanted to go about it. And of course, the meanings of those terms have shifted over the years as well, but it seems like people are pulling in opposite directions rather than pulling towards the same end with different ideas of how to get there.
Mm-hmm. And people are getting so angry all the time about everything. And not everything is worth getting angry about in the first place.
True.
And some of the stuff is just, you're not getting the full set of facts. You're hearing the one bit of information that is designed to make you angry rather than the whole story. Where when you see these things in context, sometimes it's not as bad as one side says, or it's not as good as the other side says.
Right. So the media is making their money off of your reaction to their product. So that definitely plays a role in that. We mentioned podcasts, so you listen to those. What are some other, or what types of news do you generally find yourself in contact with?
Well, prior to this, like halfway through 2025, I think I was mainly listening to very political podcasts. And I found that I was just starting to get so upset about things, because that's what those podcasts are designed to do. They get their audience from riling you up and getting you upset and passionate about something. And it's important to be passionate about something. But what I found was, last year in 2025, one of my resolutions was to read the Bible from start to finish. And I read a Bible that was in order.
Chronological.
Thank you. Couldn't think of the word. Chronological Bible, which was very, very interesting to see how everything fits together chronologically. Because sometimes when you're reading through the Bible, you're jumping back and forth, or you get to Psalms, and how that weaves into what was actually happening is really interesting. So as I was getting more into that and doing daily Bible reading, I decided that I was going to switch over from political podcasts to more Christian podcasts, which were a lot of sermons and things that were very, very biblical. And I found that doing that just changed my overall outlook during the day and how I interacted with people. I wasn't nearly as upset about some of the things that were going on because I had a bigger picture of what is supposed to be happening and what will happen. Right. And I don't need to focus on these little details, which are, yes, they're upsetting sometimes, but there is a much bigger view of the world that we have when we read the Word of God.
Yeah, so you're kind of saying your habit was, you're exercising, maybe, you have some free time to turn to the political podcast. And I think many people can relate to that. I mean, maybe you wake up and turn on the news channel on television. Maybe you go to sleep, but before you go to sleep, you watch it. Maybe you are listening to the radio on your way to work. And so it's kind of, you're becoming saturated in, as you're saying, this negative view of what's happening. And it's true that bad things are happening, right? But, you also have to balance that with the life you're living in the moment.
Right, and you don't want to be oblivious to what's going on in the world, because I think it is important to be informed of what's going on. It just can't be something that totally overtakes your mind during the day.
Yeah, and going back to something you said, that people get so angry about every little thing going on in the news. And I wonder if part of that is because of the amount of news we're getting compared to previous years.
100%. When I was growing up, we didn't have... I mean, the internet was a relatively new thing when I was in middle school, and news wasn't all over the internet. If you wanted to watch the news, they had one 24-hour news channel, but it was so boring that nobody watched it, headline news. But... with the proliferation of so many different 24-hour news networks now that are leading the ratings on every side, whether it's Fox News or MSNBC or CNN, they're all slanted in one direction or the other, whichever way you believe. You're going to think one is right and one is wrong. And there are so many people that just leave that on all day, and that's all they're getting fed into their mind. And I just think that's almost toxic.
Yeah, because at that point, you cannot process. When you're hearing something constantly, you're not processing it. It's like, I turn on a white noise machine before I go to bed. I'm not processing that noise every second as I go to sleep. You can't. Your brain physically can't. And so if you're having the news on all the time in the background, you're absorbing that news, but you're not able to really form an opinion on it. You're not able to put it in a proper place in your life because it's just constantly there.
Yeah, and I grew up in a household where there was noise. And so now that I travel a lot for work and there is no one making noise, there's a lot of times where I just put on podcasts just to have somebody speaking because I'm by myself. And, during election season, sometimes it is interesting to listen to that because you do get a little bit worked up around election time because elections have consequences and you want your side to win. But I really find that listening to the Christian podcasts and the things that are rooted in the Bible really changes the way my day goes. And daily prayer too, because I wake up, I read the Bible. Right now I'm not doing the chronological Bible. I'm doing just one that has an Old Testament reading, part of the Proverbs, part of Psalms, and a New Testament reading. And you do that every day throughout the year to get through the Bible for 2026. And so I do that, and then I get on my knees, physically get on my knees and pray in the morning, and I physically get on my knees and pray at night. And when I'm exercising, I'm listening to something biblical, and it just makes a bigger difference than anything else when I'm just focused on God and God's plan and how I can see Him working in my life in the big and little things.
Yeah, so you're kind of in a... The news has been sort of unleashed on us in unlimited form, as if we're kids going into a candy store and it's unlimited. And we have to step back then to confine that to its proper place. But then, as you're saying, not just replacing that news with something Christian, which you are doing, but also stopping and actually physically interacting with God and His Word. Getting on your knees. It's not all digital here. You're replacing it with things that are physical as well.
Yeah, I carry a physical Bible, and there are times when I'm packing where I'm like, okay, this book weighs a lot. I could get some more of my own personal stuff in here if I wasn't carrying a book and just reading off of my phone or an iPad. But my brain processes things differently. Even when if I'm studying something, if I'm physically looking at paper and can mark things down and highlight things, and tangibly feel pages as I'm turning it,
Yeah.
it gets processed into my mind differently.
That's a scientifically proven thing too. I think I've mentioned a couple times, but if you can, it's always better to read a physical book. And then not just that, but the physical Bible. I mean, that's just
But at the same time, when you're traveling, it is so nice when you think about the technology, you can have an entire library in the palm of your hand in something that weighs so little. So I understand why people do it. I just my brain responds to the information better when it's a physical paper that I'm turning pages with.
and that's the thing now on the flip side that technology does allow us to form opinions in a possibly a richer way than we could have with just one news channel on the television. Now we have access to so many opinions. It's almost too much, but it does allow us to critically evaluate things if we're choosing to look at it mindfully.
Yeah, well, also what you just said, the opinions. I think that's the problem. When I was growing up, and maybe this was happening then, and we weren't so aware of it. The evening news seemed to be pretty balanced, and they just kind of gave you actual information. And now I think almost every news show is an opinion of some sort about what they're commenting on. And so you're getting opinion more than news. You're getting the opinion of what the news is, which is kind of problematic. But it's hard to not do that. It's hard for somebody to present any information without giving their take on it, even though that's what really would be great news, is if it was just the facts and that's it.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a definition of news people don't even think about anymore, especially not my generation, because I've noticed even kids in the class, we're so used to just spitting out what we hear that kids will give a response to a teacher in class that's literally just lining up right with everything the teacher's been saying, just sort of restating it. And the teacher's like, oh, yes, you're right. And I'm like, that's not a new thought. It's just we're just absorbing opinions and then spitting them back out. And it's like not even going through our own filter.
Mm-hmm.
So that, yeah, is definitely a problem. And by putting news in a balance, you can sort of move towards fixing that problem, I guess.
But teachers are doing the same thing, and that's the scary thing, I think. Academia is not teaching people how to think; they're teaching them what to think.
It's an opinion
And
again. It's all opinion.
It's all opinion, and it's just then you're just being fed whatever opinion that teacher has, and then in order to get a good grade, you're just having to regurgitate exactly what they told you. Otherwise, they will mark you down for it, and then you're not raising a generation of free thinkers. You're just it's basically a bunch of children that are getting brainwashed, one way or the other.
Right. So you said kind of what sort of things you replaced in the space that news would have been taking up. Could you walk us through kind of, maybe especially while you're traveling, because that's when you have a bit more time for that, what does your day look like then, and where does news fit in, and where does the prayer come in, and how does that work over the course of a real day?
Yeah, so because when I'm on the road, my work it's kind of scattered throughout the day, and it's a strange business that I'm in. Some days it's completely free, and I'm waiting for, one event, and other days that I'm busy all day, and then I have the evening free, or sometimes I have my morning work session, and then I have the whole afternoon free, and then I have an evening work session. So the hours change day by day, but I don't get the schedule for the next day until the night before, which is also kind of a pain when you're trying to plan things in life. especially
Yeah.
if family's traveling with me. And that's why I know that if I set aside time in the morning, I will always have that time. And so just making it part of the routine is what has really helped. It's, we brush our teeth in the morning, we brush our teeth at night. We don't really even think about it. It's just something that we do. And I think making it a habit is what has really helped me. It became a thing that I just did. And for me, I know you've spoken about resolutions on a previous episode. For me, it's nice to set those big, huge goals, but what I find really makes a difference in my life are the little changes that become habitual. So years and years and years ago, I made a resolution to write letters every day that I was away on the road. And at the time, I just had one daughter and my wife, and so I wrote to them, and then I had a son, and then I wrote 3 letters every day that I was gone, and then I had 2 more people, and then, it ends up being 5 letters. And they end up becoming a little bit shorter notes than they were when there was just 2 people, or just even 1 person when I was writing letters to my wife. But it's something that became a routine, and something that I can't go to bed without doing. And the same thing with the Bible reading in the morning now. When I'm on the road, I wake up, and the first thing I do is I grab my Bible, I read the Bible, and then I pray. Then I get up and do everything that I need to do with the rest of the routine. And so making it the first thing I start my day with is, it changes the outlook on my day. It totally makes a difference.
And that's interesting because I think the morning is when most people actually get their news, is morning and evening. And so if you, rather than grabbing your phone, grabbed a Bible, and then rather than getting out of bed, staring at your phone, you got on your knees, and then after you've done that, you look at your phone, what a great foundation you have. You've already invited the Holy Spirit into your day to then go look at the news, to then go put it in its place and look at it through a biblical lens.
Mm-hmm. And I wish when I was a kid there weren't cell phones. And yes, it is nice to have access to all this information, and there's so many great things that come out of that, but having life being so much more simple without all that information was something really nice. And it's something that I wish that my kids could experience too, because right now my kids don't have all of that technology, as you know, but the kids around them do, and so it makes them the different ones. Whereas before, everybody was kind of floating around and not really knowing everything that was happening, for better or for worse. So there are positives and negatives, but I think there's just so much information. It's like you're opening like you said about drinking out of a water fountain. Like, it's like you're opening your mouth to get a drink, but you're getting hit in the face with a tidal wave all the time. And more than that, it's a tidal wave that you get addicted to. So you just want to keep getting hit in the face with all this information, and you're just sitting there scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and it becomes something that before you know it can just rob you not only of your time, but just there's so many more productive things that you could be doing than sitting on a phone.
Oh yeah, I mean, just think about that. We're getting. You're saying that you were floating around, but really, what were you doing was actually thinking about the real things that were happening in your actual life.
Right.
And
living life. Living
real life. And so that's enough stress and anger and problems to deal with. You have enough opinions to figure out just based on having one conversation with your family member. I mean, so it's like when Jesus said, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And not only are we worrying about tomorrow now, but we're worrying about our country's tomorrow and next country's over's tomorrow, and we're worried about policies tomorrow and the president's tomorrow. Well, that's just too much. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're not even supposed to be worrying about your own tomorrow. And here we are worrying about everybody's everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so, going back to this negativity, and then I definitely can say, this is my dad, I have definitely noticed a change, I think, in you when you made this switch, because I saw that you had you were more intentional about your living out your faith. And because you were reading a physical Bible, you had always read the Bible, but reading a physical Bible, I could see you doing it. So before, I didn't know. I mean, if you're on your phone,
It was a
I
more
don't know.
focused. It was a more focused way of going through the Bible, because I was always reading, but not as intentionally, and I think that's what made the difference. There was a plan to it.
And I know that because of your work traveling, and there's lots of, and we'll talk about this too, but there's so much. It is difficult. I mean, every job has difficulties, but being away from your family and your family not having you around as much is hard for everyone. And it's easy to get caught up in, I mean, as you said, there's just nobody talking. Like, I get left alone in the house for an hour, and I'm turning on music and podcasts because I'm like, it is too quiet in here. I'm hearing all the little creaks in the wood. But I've noticed that I feel like there's more joy in your life. Just even in just your day without anything extraordinary happening, it's just more content and more peace.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there is a sense of peace, and that doesn't mean that there aren't days where it's a struggle. I mean, because I'm on the road, and there are a lot of trying and challenging issues that I deal with just being away. But also knowing that for the time being I am doing what I'm called to do is something that brings me peace. Even when I'm around a lot of people that I would say are probably hostile to Christians. So then it's like, what does it look like to be a witness for Christ in an environment where you can't always just freely speak about it? And what I've found is the best witness is just doing your job really well. And people notice there's something different about the way I approach things, the way I work, the level of preparation I do. And then they start to ask questions, and that's how they find out that I'm a Christian. It's not like I'm just going up to everybody and being like, hey, I love Jesus or whatever, it's, which can be a little bit, much for people, especially when they're so, their concept of what Christianity is or what a Christian is so skewed, again, based on the information that they're feeding themselves with. So you need to give people a reason to want to know why you are different. And there are many ways to do that, whether that's just putting a smile on your face, which is how I ended up meeting my wife, or doing your job well, which is something that I try to do.
Yeah, that requires discipline. This is not easy. So all the things we've talked about related to setting new habits, we have had a couple episodes, resolutions, how to go to the gym, how to start a good bedtime routine, you can go back and listen to that. But none of these things are easy things that you can do in 5 minutes. And that's why this is not an Instagram reel. I mean, the things in life that are really worth it, you can't just stick into 5 seconds. You can't just go, oh, I'm going to do this one thing for 5 minutes a day and now, like, my whole life is fixed. No, this is discipline. Like you said, you don't always feel like doing it, and that's the thing. That's an important thing about habits. No, you're not going to always feel like doing it, but you just do it anyway, and you will see benefits from that, and other people will notice. And again, with doing your work excellently, if you really want to make a difference, if you really want to stand out, you're not going to do that by doing what everyone else is doing, slacking off, saturating themselves in other people's opinions, not really thinking for themselves. That's just going to make you blend in. You're not going to be having those opportunities to witness by just following the crowd. So, this brings us to, you have mentioned how you started this. What are just a couple of things off the top of your head to give to this listener right now who is thinking, okay, I see there's something here, I want to try this?
I would say just to find something little to change every day, and to make it part of your routine. So you don't need to read the Bible in 1 year. You could just start reading the Old Testament. You could just start reading the New Testament. Just start reading Proverbs. I mean, there's a lot of things that you could do pretty quickly to get. I mean, just knock out Proverbs. Just take a proverb a day, and focus on that. Just to slowly build the habit. You're not gonna.
Yeah.
It's hard to. It is daunting. There were several years, a long time ago, when I decided I was going to try that chronological Bible, and it just didn't work because if you miss a day and then you get behind 2 days and then you're having to read so much,
like 20 chapters,
and then you're just like, oh my gosh, and it's like Old Testament stuff where it's all these regulations and you're like, oh, why is this here? Or you get to a genealogy, and now it all makes sense obviously when you really start studying, but it can be very dry when you're trying to get through it just to get through it. So when you do it prayerfully, knowing that you're open and receptive to God's word, it does make a difference. But you can just do little things that make a big difference. Even if that is, maybe it is just starting with prayer and talking to God, and just, he listens. There is a difference when you not only take your problems that you're having or the concerns you're having, but also just praising him for the good things in your life. If you focus on gratitude and just all the blessings that you have, no matter how bad you think things are in your life, there are always good things in your life. And if you start to focus on gratitude for those good things, I think more good things will come.
Yes. I can definitely say when you focus on what God has blessed you with and what God, even in nature, I have started doing this where I have this prayer that I say in the car on the way to school, and the amount of things I've noticed outside the window driving by, I get so much joy from just looking at the sky. These aren't things you appreciate when you're just immediately looking at all the negative things the world wants to shout at you.
Mm-hmm. And there's a famous example that people use about when you're car shopping and you have your mindset on a car that you want, all of a sudden you start to notice all of that type of car driving on the road. And you see them everywhere where you weren't looking for it before. And the same thing happens when you're grateful and you're focusing on the good things. You focus on a few good things, and then your mind is drawn to the good things, and you realize how much goodness there actually is.
Yes. So to our listeners, you were designed to enjoy the things God has for you in your life. And yes, we are called to be different, to have our opinions grounded in the Bible. So we do need to know what's going on in the world. But God, you weren't made to carry all the world's problems. That's what Jesus is for. So hand that over to him and just prayerfully consider how you might want to put news into a healthy balance in your life. So, Dad, thank you so much for joining us here today. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you for having me.
I really enjoyed. I knew, obviously, that you were doing this, but just to hear more details about that has been great. So, thank you guys so much for listening. I'm your host, Charlie Charles, and once again, this is the O. Charles Show, over and out.